I hope you brought your imagination with you. You will need it. First of all, I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a most comfortable chair. A chair that is your favorite story time chair. Okay? Good. But before we get into the story, there are a few technical sort of terms we need to sort out. The first is Mother Church. This would be, well, a big cathedral or certainly a big church, a minster perhaps, from which people would go out and start other churches and chapels in the surrounding area. Daughter churches, they would be thought of, perhaps. Now, the second term is Simnel cake. Now, Simnel cake has been going for at least, 1,000 years. Quite a tradition. And there is a West Country folk story which says how it comes about. It seems that there was this couple in Shrewsbury, or is it Shrewsbury? Shrewsbury. And they could not agree as to how to make a special cake. And so, as the way of things is with couples, each decided to do their own thing. And so the husband made what we would probably call is a fruit cake. And then his wife encased it in saffron pastry. And that's Simnel cake. Except, of course, today the encasing is probably in marzipan. So why is it Simnel cake? Well, you should understand that the name of the wife was Nell, and the husband was called Simon, or Sim, as most people reckon. So there you are. The special cake made by Sim and Nell is Simnel cake. Convinced? The next term is fig pie. Well, it's like apple pie, except there's no apple in it, but just fig. So it's not like apple pie at all, really. It's fig pie. That done, we can start. So bring back your imagination and imagine you're back in a time, a couple of centuries or more, when there's no electricity and there's no gas. Okay? And think of a small cottage in the country at that time. Yeah. A small cottage in which live a very big family. It's the height of the summer, and we step through the front door straight into the living room. Stone floor, oak beams. But what you're struck by is the heat. It's very hot in there, and there's a fire roaring up the chimney. And in the middle of the room stands Mother. She's ironing and chatting, of course, and watching her little children play on the floor round about her, all at the same time. Alice, she says, you're to start work on Monday. Alice is not surprised at this news. She's been expecting it. After all, her big sister has been a maid at the rectory at the next village for a long while now, and her brother Edmund, has been a farm hand at a farm, 8 miles to the west. So now that she's 13 and has just left school, well, she was bound to follow her sister's example. Dutifully, Alice gets up, picks up the flat iron, which Mother has been using, which is now too cold for the job, and takes it and places it very close to that roaring fire. She picks up another flat iron, which has been there for a long while and is now exceedingly hot, and carefully takes it to her mother and hands it to her. But then the questions come pouring out. Where am I going to go work? What sort of work am I going to do? Oh, says Mother, you're going to Grange House. That's where the squire of Grange village lives, and you're to be a kitchen maid. Well, don't worry, says Mother. Your father will take you there on Sunday afternoon, and he'll carry your box of stuff. And Mother thinks, well, it won't be heavy, will it? But fortunately, the employer will provide Alice with a uniform. And Alice thinks, just a few more days at home then. Once there, Alice discovers what being a kitchen maid involves. It involves feeding a hungry fire with buckets full of coal which are to be collected from the backyard. It involves washing and drying a stream of pots and pans that never ends. It involves chopping up mounds of vegetables. But she's used to hard work and gets on with it, and soon becomes a well-accepted and reliable member of the kitchen team. She's homesick to begin with, but takes great pleasure at sending money home to help the family. She soon discovers that there's little time to go home, and so she thinks perhaps Christmas would be a good time, and she asks about it but is told no. The whole place will be full of visitors at Christmas, and they'll be wanting this and demanding that. No, there'll be no time at Christmas to go home, that she will have to wait for Mothering Sunday. Seems that Mothering Sunday is always on the 4th Sunday of Lent, today, in fact. When the custom had grown that instead of going to your local church or chapel, you went back to the mother church. And from that grew the tradition of the servants being given the day off to go and visit their mother. And so it was. Eventually, time ticked by and Mothering Sunday came. And Alice was up and early and away before it was even light. She had a long way to go. It was 10 miles back to the big hill and then down to the village or the hamlet in which she lived, and then on several more miles to the mother church. As she went, she carried a bright ribbon. In those days, many wildflowers flourished. And as she went, she picked wildflowers that she knew her mother liked particularly, and then tied them together in a bundle, using the ribbon, making a beautiful bow. She reached the top of the big hill and descended. The descent was steep and hurt her knees. She got to the bottom, went right past her old home, and began the trek to the mother church. She got there, I think, just about in time. And as she entered, she was amazed at the number of people that were inside. Where was Mum? She desperately looked around and saw her mother waving at her. She'd saved a seat for Alice. She sat down. No sooner had she sat down than the service began. At the front of the church, there were 2 big black boards on which was written in gold letters, on one side, the Lord's Prayer, and on the other side, the 10 Commandments. It turned out that the day's service was about number 5, honor your mother and father. How appropriate, thought Alice. After the service was over, it was back to the house. They all piled into the living room, quite a group. And the talk was all, wow, haven't the little children grown? They always do. And how wonderful it was to see Mabel and Alice and Edward again. Mabel had brought her young man with her. He stood next to her, attentive, shy, awkward, really. I think it was the prospect of meeting his mother-in-law to be for the first time that was the problem. Well, I remember that occasion, yes. Anyway, the next thing was the pantomime of trying to get everybody round the table. Quite a pantomime, yes. And when they sat down, they began to eat a meal, which included all the favourite Mother's Day food. The yummy simnel pie and the scrumptious fig pie. Yeah. Lots of chatter, lots of laughter, lots of eating. And then suddenly came that, gosh, is that the time experience, as poor Alice realised that she had to get back to Grange House as to play her part in preparing for the evening meal. So now there was lots of hugs and kisses and goodbyes. It took ages, but eventually she did get away, carrying a big chunk of simnel cake with her as compensation. She climbed a big hill and at the top stopped to get her breath back. She thought of her sister and her young man, now formally engaged, and thought perhaps one day she would take a young man home, like her big sister. And then her mind drifted on, and she pictured her standing in a room, a hot room, ironing, chatting, and watching over young children playing at her feet. Well, hang on to your dreams, Alice, but you've got to get back. And so she started off briskly walking down to Grange Village. Yeah. You know, Alice, soon, in just 3 weeks' time, it'll be Easter, and it will be another story. Remember, it'll be the story of Jesus suffering a great ordeal as he dies upon the cross for our sins and for our relationship with God forever. Yeah, and remember that even while he is on that suffering cross, he remembers his mother as he sees Mary and John standing at the foot of the cross and says, "Dear mother, this man is now your son." And to John, "John, this is now your mother." Sometimes being a mother can be quite distressing, Alice. But remember your dreams, and remember that Mother's Day, or Mothering Sunday, is always a perfect opportunity to say, "Mother, I love you."